Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first lecture of dental anatomy. I hope you're all as excited as I am to begin this course. My name is Abir Hakim. I graduated from dental college, from Riyadh Dental College in 2012, and right now I'm doing my master's degree in New York University in biomaterials. So, about this course, we're going to be covering it in short and sweet segments. Each lecture is not going to be too long or too overwhelming. You're going to feel like it's a lot of new words, a lot of meanings, and you might feel like, oh my God, what is this? But it really isn't. If you just memorize it and go over it one session at a time, you're going to be absolutely fine, and you're gonna say, oh, this is really simple. So we're going to be covering in this course most of the terminology and eruption sequences and the numbering of the teeth. We're also going to be discussing the anatomy of each tooth individually. So it's going to be a really good ride. All right, so for this lecture, we're going to be talking about just the general basic terminology of dental anatomy. If you guys have any questions, I can answer it in the middle of the lecture. We're going to take like a 5-minute break, and we can also answer it at the end of the lecture. All right, let's start. So the first thing we need to know when we talk about dental anatomy is the dentition. What is a dentition? Dentition is the development of teeth and their arrangement in the mouth. So we all know that we have two jaws, the upper jaw and the lower jaw, right? So all together, the jaws with the teeth, all together, this is called a dentition. Now, we go through stages in life as a baby, as an infant, a baby, and then you go into teenage years, and then you go to adulthood. And as you notice, babies aren't born with teeth. So as soon as the first tooth pops, it's called a primary dentition. You get all your baby teeth. Primary dentition is all the baby teeth. Your first tooth pops at 6 months, and it goes all the way till 6 years. That's when your first baby tooth falls out. So that's called a primary dentition. And then you transition from a primary dentition to a mixed dentition. How does that happen? It's not when you lose your baby tooth. Out. That's when all your teeth should be out, your permanent teeth. As soon as that is accomplished, all your permanent teeth are out, you go into the permanent dentition. Doesn't want to move. Oh, here we go. Oops. Okay. After we discussed what a dentition is, now let's divide this dentition into two sections. It's going to be called arches. Now, how we discussed that we have an upper jaw and a lower jaw. The upper jaw with the arrangement of the teeth is called an arch. The same goes to the lower jaw. The lower jaw with the arrangement of the teeth all together is called an arch. Now, to be more professional with your terminology, instead of saying upper and lower arches, because you guys you're dentists now, you're going to be calling it maxillary arch for the upper and the mandibular arch for the lower. And you're going to be using this terminology a lot. Maxillary and mandibular is going to be like your middle names from now on. So just don't get confused between a dentition and an arch. Just remember, a dentition is the whole thing. The arch is the thing cut in half, and you have maxillary and mandibular. Alrighty. Now, remember this. You have an arch, it's cut in half, right? So when we move on to the next one, a quadrant. Just from its name, a quadrant is like 1/4 a piece of something. And when you talk about a quadrant in the oral cavity, you're talking about the arches. You have the two arches, your maxillary and mandibular, and then you have a midline. This midline cuts the dentition in half. Each arch is divided in half. And when each arch is divided in half, you start having 4 quadrants. So a quadrant is a division of jaws into 4 parts. Beginning at the midline, this is the midline of each arch extending to the last tooth in the back of the mouth. So this is going to be a quadrant. So 2 quadrants make up 1 arch. Make sense? Simple, right? Okay. Now, we're going to go a little bit more in depth and talk about the actual teeth. You have 2 kinds, whether it's primary dentition, mixed dentition, permanent dentition. You're always going to have anterior teeth and posterior teeth. Now, I don't want you to get like overwhelmed with all the terminology that we're going through right now, so just take a deep breath and let's talk about anterior teeth. So you can like use your finger to run over your front teeth. You're going to have 2 big ones in the middle and then 2 next to them and 2 next to them too. So the first six, so from up until your canines or your eye teeth, those are called anterior teeth. Okay? And don't worry about the names of the teeth, you're going to get them. You just have to go over them more and more. So the big teeth over here in the middle, this goes, by the way, this goes for the maxillary arch and the mandibular arch. The front teeth, the 2 front teeth are called central incisors, and the 2 smaller teeth that look just like it are called lateral incisors. So these are your incisors, okay, because they cut the food, so they incise the food. And then you have your canines, okay? Everybody has 4 canines. Remember, upper and lower. Okay. And for your posterior teeth, it's the back teeth. The teeth that feel bulky in the back when you run your tongue over them. Those are your back teeth, your posterior teeth. So, what are our posterior teeth? Everybody has a first premolar and a second premolar. They're also called bicuspids because they have 2 cusps, and we'll discuss that in further lectures. You have a first molar, a second molar. Well, in this picture, you're supposed to have the third molar, which is the wisdom tooth. Okay? So, in any dentition, there's a number of teeth that are present in our mouth. And just to let you guys know, in a permanent dentition, in total, you have 32 teeth, and in primary dentition, you have 20 teeth. Okay? Because in primary dentition, they don't have premolars. They have all the other teeth, but they don't have premolars. Alrighty, moving on. Okay, so this is a nice picture of what permanent teeth and primary or deciduous teeth, also known as deciduous teeth, look like. Okay, so I put these pictures just to help you guys distinguish between each tooth and so you can know the names. So here, like we discussed it before, you have the central incisors, lateral incisors over here. This is the cuspid or the canine. It's also called the cuspid because it has 1 cusp. Don't worry about that. You can just go with canine for now. And remember, those are anterior teeth, okay? Same in the bottom, anterior teeth. And you also have, for posterior teeth, you have first premolar, second premolar, first molar, second and third molar, or wisdom teeth, okay? And if you look over to the deciduous teeth, they don't have the premolars, remember? And they don't even have a third molar. They just have first and second molar. Their mouth is so tiny and small, it can only have so many teeth at once. Alrighty? So I want you guys to go over this later on, throughout the week. Just keep looking at it. Keep reading it. You don't have to memorize it all in 5 minutes. Just keep looking at it. Look at your teeth in the mirror. Distinguish which is an anterior tooth, which is a posterior tooth. Try to quiz yourself every once in a while, and you'll eventually get it. It's going to become second nature to you. You might even start talking to your family members, saying the names of the teeth, instead of pointing to that tooth or this tooth. Okay, so I think I'm going to take just a 5-minute break. I want to see who's in, and see if you guys have any questions. All right. We'll keep moving on. Okay, so In this part, we're going to be talking about the surfaces of the teeth. Now, remember how we talked about each tooth, the dentition, the arches, the quadrant? Alright, now, when you look at each tooth individually, it has 4 surfaces. Each tooth is shaped in a certain way where you can say the front surface, the back surface, the surface on the right, the surface on the left, right? So you get the front surface, the back surface, the right surface, the left surface. Okay, now, each surface of these teeth has a name. It has a medical terminology to it. And don't let this overwhelm you. It's super, super easy. It just takes a lot of practice. So we're going to start with the buccal or the facial aspect of the tooth. And that's going to be like, okay, so imagine this. The dotted line over here is your lips and cheeks. Okay? So you can go over it with your tongue and your mouth. Go over the part of your tooth that's closest to your lips and cheeks. That outer part, right? Okay, so it's facing outside to your face. It's called facial. That's the facial surface of the tooth. It's towards your lips. It's also called labial because, you know, it's towards the lips. Just remember, face, lips, facial. And then you come to buccal. Buccal is the same surface, but it's usually used for the teeth, for the posterior teeth, the teeth in the back. Why? Because it's facing the cheek. And in the cheek, you have a muscle called the buccinator muscle. And that's where buccal comes from. Okay, so for anterior teeth, the surface is going to be called facial or labial surface. And for posterior teeth, it's going to be called the buccal surface. Now, for the back surface, the surface that's facing your inside palate and the floor of the mouth and your tongue, that has a different name. It's going to be called the lingual surface. The lingual surface is usually referred to for mandibular teeth, and you have the palatal for maxillary teeth, the upper teeth. Why? Because the upper teeth are facing the palate, so hence palatal. The lower one is facing the tongue and the floor of the mouth, so it's called lingual. Okay, but it's fine for now. You can just like know lingual, and then when you're familiar with lingual, you can differentiate between lingual and palatal. Okay. So again, for anterior teeth, the outer surface is called facial, and for posterior teeth, it's buccal. For the inside surface, the maxillary teeth, it's palatal, and for the mandibular teeth, it's lingual. So in this picture, it's for the mandibular teeth. Alright? Okay, so let's go on to the other surfaces. Okay, now this is an interesting one. So when you run your tongue around your teeth again, but this time on the edges of the teeth, you can see that the anterior teeth have a sharp edge, like a cutting edge, and then the posterior teeth have like a surface, right? To like grind the teeth and everything. Okay, so in the anterior teeth, that sharp edge is called the incisal edge. Remember the incisal edge from their name, incisors, central and lateral incisors, and they have an incisal edge. Okay, so this surface is called incisal, and for the posterior teeth, it's called occlusal. Okay, so there's like a big platform and surface, so it's called occlusal. So again, the outer surface of the anterior teeth is called labial, posterior, buccal. The inside surface for the maxillary teeth is palatal, for the mandibular teeth is lingual. And now, for the edges and the surfaces, we have incisal edge for anterior teeth, and we have occlusal surface for posterior teeth. Good? Alright, let's move on to the next. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the right and left surface of each tooth, okay? Now this is the easy part. Remember how we talked about the midline when we were talking about arches and quadrants? Okay, so this midline runs between the central incisors, right in the middle, on the top, on the maxillary arch and the mandibular arch, okay? So it splits the arch in half. Now, each surface that's closer to the midline is called mesial, and each surface that's away from the midline is called distal. Am I making any sense? Let me explain it in another way. So each tooth has this surface and that surface, right? It's right and left. You just can't generalize the rule of it being on the right, then it's mesial, or it's on the left, and it's distal. No. You have to establish where the midline is in the mouth and where the tooth is to the midline. Now, this tooth is in the very back. I'm just going to take this as an example. This tooth is in the very back, and this surface is closer to the midline than this surface, right? So this surface automatically is going to be the medial surface, or mesial surface, and this one's going to be the distal surface because it's away from it. Good? So it's easy. See? So do you guys still remember what buccal and facial is? Facial is for the anterior teeth, the outer surface, and buccal is for the posterior teeth, outer surface. Lingual and palatal? Sorry. I just had 1 cup of coffee today, so. Lingual is going to be for mandibular teeth, the back surface, and palatal is going to be the back surface of the maxillary teeth. Incisal and occlusal. Incisal is the incisal edges of the anterior teeth, and the occlusal surface for the posterior teeth. Mesial, towards the midline, this is mesial, and distal is away from the midline. Good? It is super fun to learn. This is the fun part, guys. Okay, remember how I was talking about the canines and the premolars, how they're also known as a cuspid and bicuspid, and I talked to you about a cusp? You guys might be wondering, what is a cusp? What is it? So I'm going to tell you. A cusp is an incisal or occlusal eminence of a tooth. So let's say here, for example, these are posterior teeth, right? You see how there's like lines in the middle, okay, and you have these prominent parts of the tooth that are like poking out. Those are called cusps. Here, this is a cusp. This is a cusp. These are premolars, and remember when I said they're called bicuspids? They're called bicuspids, honey, because they have 2 cusps. 1, 2. 1, 2. And the same goes for the canine. The canine is anterior tooth, but it doesn't have an incisal edge like the rest. It has a cusp, hence its name, cuspid. Alright? So let's go over. And central and lateral incisors have incisal edges, right? Remember? This is one of the surfaces. Mesial incisal and distal incisal edges. Now, remember how we talked about mesial and distal? Towards the midline, so the midline is going to be here. So this is a mesial and this is distal. And you have edges. This is the incisal edge. You have one edge over here and you have one edge over here. Now, the edge that is closest to the midline, what do you think that is? Got it. Mesial incisal is closer to the midline. And this is the distal incisal edge because it's further away from the midline. Once you know mesial and distal, you're going to know every edge of each tooth. And like we said, canines have 1 cusp right here because they are known as cuspids. Premolars have 2 cusps as well, known as bicuspids. Molars usually differ. Each molar is different, but we don't have to go into the details now. We're going to discuss it in further lectures. But I just want you to know that usually molars have between 4 to 5 cusps. Okay? And I think that's all for today. I didn't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information. This is all very new to you guys. I know that. And please, if you have any questions, you can ask me anytime, email me. I posted my email over here. And I also posted a quick question for you guys, just to keep your mind going. The question states, how many anterior teeth and posterior teeth are in a permanent dentition and in a primary dentition? Just divide it. I already gave you how many teeth in each dentition in general. I just want to know how many anterior teeth and posterior teeth. And how many in each arch. I just want to know if you guys understand the difference between dentition and arch. Okay? And that will be all for today. Thank you so much for listening and being with me, and I look forward to giving you the next lecture soon.